This is Nick Ricada, and you're listening to a Sunset Sea production. It's better than whiskey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 32 of the Imperial Tides podcast. I'm your host, Holden, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Simone. Although, because he is in a different recording location now, he is not able to appear on video, but he will be with us in audio. So you'll see me, but we'll both be talking. Simone, how you doing today? How's it going?
Great, but there's a lot of contexts that are happening.
Sure. But that's good. Because I needed to ask you that to check your audio, but it sounds like it's good for now. So we'll roll with it. We'll see what happens. We'll go for about an hour as usual. So we have just watched episode. What is it now? We're on episode 9. Episode 9 of 14 of the West German television series, miniseries / film, Berlin Alexanderplatz. And it's been 3 weeks since the last time we reviewed an episode, but we're back into the swing of things, and I didn't really have any problem getting back into it. You watch it, you get dragged. You are able to immerse yourself in the world of Franz Bieberkopf and company. And so, as always, we start out these reviews with a summary, a play-by-play of what actually happened in the episode or film that we're talking about. So, this particular episode, episode 9, was called About the Eternities Between the Many and the Few. So, it's episode 9 of 14 of Berlin Alexanderplatz, About the Eternities Between the Many and the Few. And this was all made in 1980, all released in 1980, the year 1980. So, so what happens in this episode? Well, the episode starts out with Ava convincing Franz to get back together with Mitzi, who was the woman that was the girl that, the prostitute essentially that he gets together with in the previous episode. And Ava convinces him successfully, and he does. Mitzi provides for him with the money that she makes from working as a prostitute, because he's a cripple, because he can't really do much other than petty theft. He's not really good for much now that he's lost his arm, so Mitzi is the one that is the breadwinner in the relationship. And Franz, also on the side, he does continue doing quote-unquote business with Willie, which consists of selling counterfeit goods to people. It's not the best thing in the world, but it's not as bad as working for Pums in the criminal syndicate. So it seems to be doing him just enough, good enough for now, for the time being, just enough to keep him from having to rely on Pums and going back into that world, After making amends with Mitzi by buying her flowers, Franz pays a visit to Reinald's apartment. They talk things out for a bit, and Reinald ultimately feels guilt for having caused Franz to lose his arm by throwing him out of the moving car that they were both passengers in a few episodes back, during a burglary that they were involved in with the criminal syndicate with Pums. And so, in a way, the two, Franz and Reinald, make amends, but things are still naturally a bit rocky between them. This episode has 2 instances of the flashback of Franz murdering his wife. The first is overlaid with a narration of a soldier's journal, and the second is overlaid with some sort of religious parable about a father who brings his son to a mountain in order to sacrifice him for God. And the son switches roles with the father midway through the story and is the one to sacrifice the father, and is about to actually slit his father's throat when God speaks out to them, congratulating them for their loyalty and obedience and telling them not to make a sacrifice after all, as the pretext of a sacrifice was the point rather than an actual sacrifice. Just the fact that they were both willing to, I guess, give away a loved one in order to express their devotion for their Lord, that in and of itself was enough to satiate him. They did not actually need to go through with any sort of blood or body sacrifice of any sort. So from there, Franz walks through the street of temptation once again. There's a street of temptation with the man in the white suit, right? But this time, the man in the white suit is actually too tired and demoralized to give him the sales pitch about the horror of Babylon that he supposedly can offer him some time with. So for context, in case you guys don't know, there is, in the past few episodes now, we've seen this street that doesn't, Franz in public, just in Berlin. It's this random street in Berlin. It's a bit far, it's a bit off. It's like you have to deviate from the regular street with all the normal people and everything walking down it. It's an alleyway. So there's this alleyway that has this man with a white suit and a bunch of prostitutes around him. And the man in the white suit seems to be some sort of pimp who's trying to sell Franz one of the women, time with one of the women. And Franz has always rejected his offer, even though the man in the white suit has gone to great lengths to really, really play it up for him, make a whole story out of it, and try to convince him to the best of his ability to engage in this weird, basically prostitute ring that he has. And so now, I think it's the third time now that we've seen this street of temptation. Franz has gone down it, and the man in the white suit is no longer interested. He's too tired. He already knows that Franz is going to say no, so he doesn't bother giving the pitch this time until Franz demands that he gives the pitch. So Franz asks him, he's like, just tell it to me anyway, even though I'm going to say no, I want to hear the story. And so by urging him to give the pitch, the man in the white suit does give him the pitch, even though he knows that what the answer is already. And in return for having heard it, Franz tells the man in the white suit this disjointed, nonsensical story about a fly that's trapped in a flower pot. And it doesn't really have any ending, and there isn't really any point to it. It's just this weird story that he tells him. And the man in the white suit then responds to that by telling Franz that he can learn how to tell stories if he simply practices. So he gives him a bit of advice, and Franz commits to working on it from there. And this is actually probably part of the reason why the parable about the father and son sacrificing each other is laid over the second flashback, because you see there are numerous examples from this moment in the episode going forward, in which there are these traditional stories that are being narrated by the unseen narrator. And the implication of that is that Franz is now actively working on articulating himself a bit better, at least in the realm of storytelling, in the realm of I guess the oral tradition of storytelling, the most time honored, and that's why you have references to the Bible, because that's an ancient form of storytelling that still continues even to this day to have some at least some degree, some level of relevance and impact on the society, on culture, on various communities, and so on and so forth, right? So from there, Franz pays a visit to Max's bar, which is his usual watering hole, and Max tries to actually persuade him to go straight again. He wants Franz to quit drinking, to disassociate himself from the various prostitutes in his life, Ava, Mitzi, and to also stop committing petty crimes with Willie. And Franz goes to the bar with Willie, so they actually go there to have a quick drink before getting up to no good, I guess. And Franz doesn't really pay much attention to Max's words of wisdom. Excuse me. And he doesn't take it as seriously as he should, perhaps. And this is also where the second flashback to Franz's murder, Franz's killing, appears. And from there, Franz and Willie, they get into a conversation. Max he realizes he can't really do much more. He can't really say much more to try to get Franz out of his current situation. But the implication of this is that, of course, this is likely foreshadowing that what he has going on now with Mitzi and Willie is not going to work, and that he's probably going to have to go back to work for Pums, and that's going to lead to even more disaster. I mean, he's already lost one arm, so who knows how much worse things can get from here. But the implication with that is that good things are not to come. The good things are not to come. The corner is dark. Things are dark right around the corner, let's just say. So, the episode ends. So the episode ends from there with Franz and Willie attending some kind of anarchist meeting in this half-destroyed building somewhere. And the two get into a long debate with a man from the meeting who is a firm believer of the cause and the ideology that the meeting is centered around. And during the debate that they're having with this man, Franz continually mocks him for the contradictions that the man seems to have in his logic regarding the ideology that he is a part of. And for the sake of simplicity, I don't know exactly what sort of social or political ideology it is, but because it's referred to within the show as anarchism, we're just going to call it anarchism. So this man is an anarchist. Franz and Willie have attended this anarchist meeting seemingly for fun, seemingly because they're bored and they have nothing better to do. And so they sit in on it, they hear them out, and then after the meeting, they get into this spirited debate with one of the people from the meeting who very much believes in it, who very much is a proponent of this particular form of anarchism. It's not Nazism, it's not capitalism, and it's not socialism. It's anarchism. I don't know what kind of anarchism, though, because I'm not overly familiar with just the world of anarchism in general. But this man is a self-proclaimed anarchist, and Franz and Willie are very much not. And so, yeah, the basic philosophy of the movement that this man is a part of, from the looks of it, what this anarchism boils down to is essentially, it's essentially the belief that the reason why Germany's system is broken and countless citizens are unemployed is because the fundamental structure of the German society of the time is designed to only benefit the rich, right? And so elite capitalists reap all of the benefit. Elite capitalists reap all the fruits of the average worker's labor, while socialists promote a new system that would leave everybody with nothing. So both sides are wrong. The anarchists disagree with both sides, but do not seem to have any sort of concrete solution of their own. Rather, instead, they seem to mainly define themselves by the fact that they are neither capitalists or socialists or national socialists, which would be, of course, the Nazi Party. The man that Franz is debating with, so this anarchist, this self-proclaimed anarchist, contradicts himself at one point during their debate by proposing that the anarchists form a combat organization, while also arguing at the exact same time that any kind of order or system is doomed to be corrupted from the outset, right? So why would you want to start some sort of combat organization when when your philosophy dictates, when your belief system dictates that it's going to fall apart anyway? What's the point? That sounds like a futile endeavor. So why would you want to do that? See, it gets paradoxical. It becomes a circular form of argumentation. So from there, Franz and Willie, they laugh the man off and go to pay Ava and her boyfriend Herbert a visit at their apartment. And Franz jokingly explains the anarchists' perspective to Ava and Herbert, but halfway through his explanation, he actually realizes that he agrees with the anarchists more than he initially thought he did, right? And the episode finishes out with Franz telling Willie how surprising it is that people can have similar goals but completely different methods and ideas when it comes to actually executing and achieving said goals, right? And Willie responds by telling Franz that isn't as bizarre as it sounds. It is simply human nature. We all approach things differently. We all have our own weird, unique, individual, subjective perspectives, points of view, and sometimes that can lead to weird schisms. And at the end of the day, perhaps part of that sentiment, part of Willie's sentiment there, is that perhaps there isn't much difference between all of these groups that claim to be so different from each other, right? And that's the end of the episode. So yeah. Did I miss anything, Simone? Is there anything you'd like to add to the summary portion of the episode before we move on to the discussion phase?
Thanks, but none.
Okay, cool. So then, leading right into the discussion portion of the episode, then, Simone, what would you rate this episode out of 10 and why?
Yeah, that's a bit of a tough question to answer because we've been to a break for a week, so maybe I'll give it a 7 for now before we start into the discussion because I haven't fully decided or fully what this episode is all about or what are the things that happen in this episode for or what does it really means.
Sure.
Fully.
Yeah, a 7 out of 10 is a good baseline. It's a good place to start. It's mild. You can either go up or down from there. It's a nice middle range, sort of mid-range sort of rating. But for me, I would give it an 8 out of 10. I would bump it up 1 point. And that's because, I don't know. I have to reason through it a little bit because it is a bit of an interesting one, as always. Every episode is distinct from the other, right? But for me, this episode, the way I see it, it took a step back from the action. It's very dialogue heavy and really only focuses on a few things, those things being Franz effortlessly slipping back into his old ways while still managing to resist his worst vices. So he's in this weird sort of purgatory of sorts where it's like externally he's falling apart, but internally he's still keeping up the fight. He's still remaining adhering and resolute to what he had promised to himself at the beginning of the film of the series, which was that he, after getting out of prison, he would not slip back into the old habits that he had prior to going to prison, which arguably led to him getting arrested in the first place and taking another life, taking his wife's life. He doesn't want to go back to that kind of lifestyle, but in a lot of ways he sort of accidentally has. It's just fallen back into him. for a number of reasons. He hasn't been able to find stable, reliable employment. The newspaper fell apart. The Nazi stuff, that was a mess. That was just a full-on disaster. Everything really. The criminal pums. Obviously he lost an arm from that, so he's probably not going to want to go back to that right away. He'll probably have to eventually, but for now he's trying to make it by doing as little damage as possible. It's minimal, right? The work he's doing right now is nominal. He's only stealing. Selling stolen pocket watches and that sort of thing. It's not offensively bad yet. And the girlfriend that he has, she may be a prostitute and she may pay him for her services, but he really isn't. He's not to the point where he is like a full-on pimp. The relationship hasn't gotten to that point yet. Things are still good enough to where you can almost think that maybe he'll be able to make it this way. He might be, maybe just maybe he'll be able to exist like this, but it seems temporary to me. That's just my opinion. I don't know. I really doubt that any of this is going to last beyond this particular episode, but we'll see, right? And so Franz is caught up in this midpoint between being the person he used to be and being better. So that's one of the things that the episode is about, but it's also about how Franz's murder haunts the narrative repeatedly, almost more than ever. I think this is the most times that we've seen the murder scene, the flashback in one single episode. So clearly that's something that's going to come up. It's there. It's very much present. Its presence has been duly noted. It's known. It's making itself known. It's going to be a problem, I'm assuming. That's what this episode seems to be saying anyway, by including it so many times. And then the third thing that the episode is about is, of course, the social and political unrest that continues to build up and boil over as the series progresses. So the more time goes by, the worse things get, and the more primed, I guess, the more set the stage is for things like fascism and World War II and the Holocaust and all the horrors of the 1930s and 40s. Lots of foreshadowing for that. Lots of scene setting in that respect. And so Franz and the world around him are being fleshed out even more in this particular episode, whereas the plot with Pum's criminal syndicate has been put on the back burner for the time being. And I get the impression that the ease and peace Franz has managed to carve out for himself with Mitzi and Willie will not last long beyond this single episode. It's only a matter of time before he's forced back into working for Pum's. But the good news, however, there is a silver lining in this, is that he seems to have made amends with Rhino, at least for now, at least for a little longer. So the two of them aren't as hostile with one another as they previously were. Although, to be fair, I guess Franz never really was outright hostile to Reinhold. It was always on Reinhold's part, but it seems as though Reinhold has taken a certain degree of responsibility for what happened to Franz and his arm, and so it seems as though things have calmed down a bit between them. It's not as bad as it was before, because they have talked it out, at least a little bit. But overall, I would say that this episode, it's another one that deviates from the series' main conflict in order to, I guess, zoom in on Franz and a specific aspect of the Berlin society for a little while, right? The Berlin society of the time, the German society of the time. In that sense, I would say that it's effective. It accomplishes what it sets out to do. It achieves that goal of providing us with a little more introspection and a little more of world building from a specific angle. So we've had episodes like this before. It's a different kind of episode because it's focusing on a different subject matter. It's approaching the material from a different angle. But it's a type. We figured this out, that there are two main types of episodes within the context of the series overall, right? There are the episodes that further the main plot, right? The main conflict, everything with and I would say those are ones that have to do with Franz resisting his personal demons. He does that here, but it more so in an external way that involves other characters. That that's the main thing. That, and also the criminal stuff, slipping back into his life of crime. Whereas they reference it here, obviously, and they flirt with it. It's not the main thing. The main thing is more so in this episode the weird anarchism, the introduction of anarchism, the anarchist meeting, so on and so forth, and that's what these episodes. And so that's the first kind of episode. The episodes that drive the main conflict forward. I would say that the first episode is very much one of those. Just to give an example, an arbitrary example. And then the second type of episode, it's like a filler episode, but I would refer to it as a secondary episode because you have primary episodes that focus on the main conflict, and you have secondary episodes that focus on everything else, everything around the main conflict, everything surrounding it, the world around it. So and I wouldn't want to call it a filler episode. I wouldn't want to use that nomenclature because I feel as though the secondary function is just as important as the primary. It's just different. It's like going left as opposed to right. One is not necessarily incorrect. It's just different. And so, yeah, I feel as though with this with these episodes, with these secondary episodes, they might be they do focus on, like I said before, they focus on 2 or 3 specific things. And I would say that the main episodes, there isn't much of a difference. They focus on like 3 to 6 maybe. So even though as you watch them, you might feel as though the experience of actually watching a primary episode compared to a secondary episode, you might think that that's a lot different, but it really isn't. It really isn't. There's just more going on in the primary episodes, but there's still plenty that's worth discussing, even in an episode like this where, like I said before, there isn't as much action and not as much happens per se. But there's a lot to analyze. There's a lot that is surveyed, let's just say. With regard to the shows, I guess lore or world building. It's really a world building episode, so yeah, you have to approach it slightly differently, somewhat differently from how you would a primary episode, let's just say. So yeah, with that being said, that's not to say that these secondary episodes, again, they're not necessarily not enjoyable to watch. Like, you can still get a lot out of them, but it is somewhat strange to me. I will say it is somewhat strange to me that either the author or the director or both felt the need to include at least what's going on in this episode. Right, include at least this episode, especially at this stage in the narrative. We're more than halfway through now. You would expect that things would sort of narrow, the focus would narrow and really just focus on what's going on with the main conflict and resolve that, or not, but really just focus on that. I thought that would be the point. But no, instead we're doing another deviation. Episode 9 is another deviation. And so coming out of it, I almost feel as though there was no real point in watching it. There's a part of me that feels that way. Not a big part. And that part of me, it also feels as though I wouldn't be confused probably. Like, you probably could just watch part 10 and skip this one altogether and not really miss out on too much. But I don't know. The feeling of pointlessness isn't strong enough to ruin the episode for me full on. It's just more present than it was with some of the other, I guess, quote-unquote filler episodes, secondary episodes that we've seen thus far. I don't know if you feel that way, Simone, but I would be willing to argue that this might, in fact, be the most dispensable of the episodes that we've seen so far. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think I will agree with what you said because those are the things that I get from it. Especially, it's just a sum of a lot of pillars episode. Some of the pillars might be included in the previous episodes of the review, but they included all the pillars that they can get from all the episodes I've reviewed so far. They put it all together in this episode. That's how I see it, because those are the themes that are normally included in those kinds of pillars that I see.
Yeah, and maybe it's just because we've seen 2 of these in a row, right? So episode 8 was also a filler episode or a secondary episode, depending on how you want to look at it. But yeah, maybe the problem is more so the fact that we've spent a little too much time away from the main plot at this point, because we have had 2 episodes in a row now that have been filler, that have been focused on things that have nothing to do really with Pums, and that's the real conflict. Pums and the criminal syndicate and Franz's involvement in it, and Franz fighting his personal demons. They flirt with it a little bit in this episode and in episode 8 as well. In every filler episode, you get this. These are things that are consistent throughout the series all together. However, they're not expounded upon nearly as much as they are in the main episodes. So yeah, I just think that I want to give it the benefit of the doubt, is what I was trying to say earlier. I want to give it the benefit of the doubt, and I want to think of it in the context of the series overall, and the fact that we might just be inundated with filler stuff. It's like, maybe it's not that bad. It's just the fact that it's been a while since we've gotten to the major developments. Maybe it's just a bit of restlessness on my part anyway. I don't know. But there has to be something to get into with this episode. I think the anarchism stuff, the anarchist scene and everything in the last few minutes. I think that really there's a lot to get into there. So Simone, what did you think of the episode's technical aspects? What did you think of and so when we say technical aspects, we're referring to camera work, we're referring to lighting, maybe even acting. Just what goes into making the show or the movie. So, Simone, what did you think of episode 9's technical aspects? Was there anything that stuck out to you in particular, or was it just standard as always? Just anything you have to say on it, to speak about on it?
Yeah, there are some notable scenes that I remember, especially when they're talking about anarchism and they're playing in this. I guess it is a base. It's the basement of the building where they live in.
Right. Well, and what about it? What about the scene?
Yeah, those are some of the scenes. I guess I like how the camera works take place in that one. Especially taking turns of who's the one who's going to talk, and I like how the scene give it a different aspect or aesthetic in it.
Yeah, right. Because in that scene, they have interesting camera work going on. Right, they have they show you shots of they film it all from a distance for the most part. They film it on kind of on the ground behind the playground equipment because they're in this weird basement, like you said. They're in the basement of this dilapidated, abandoned apartment complex, and there's a bunch of wooden playground equipment around them. And the shots, each shot in that particular sequence, it really does. It focuses on the playground equipment almost more than it does the actual characters themselves. And so there is something interesting in that. And I like that. I also did really enjoy the visuals that came from that. Overall, though, this episode, it had good and bad in terms of the technical aspects. In terms of its technical aspects, let's just say its technical aspect, right? So for me, the first 10 minutes, of the episode had shots and lighting that made the series look, I think, as cheap as it ever has thus far. It was really bad. I didn't like it at all. I think there's something to be said about filming at the right time of day. I think you got to be really careful as a filmmaker, as a film crew. You got to film, if you're going to use natural lighting, you got to make sure that it actually fits whatever it is that you're going for, right? And it's not necessarily that the lighting was inappropriate in this particular scene that I'm about to talk about, but I'm referring to the scene in which Franz and Mitzi they reunite at the railway station, and this is about within the first 10 minutes of the episode that they do this reunion, and they're outside and they're filming on the street. To me, it's not so much that it was inappropriate. It was just that it was fundamentally flawed. I think the lighting was bad. I think it was bad objectively. No matter what you're trying to do, I think this was just poor lighting by conventional. I guess let's say filmmaking standards, right? Because to me, the natural lighting, the sun on the street was so bright that it actually at least from how I saw it, and you could disagree with this, Simone, I'm not sure. But from the way I saw it, it washed out the actual film in the cameras itself. So the film that they're filming on, it was a little washed out. It was a little paler than it should have been. It was because of the lighting. It was because of the sun. And it also didn't help. This scene overall, the technical work in the scene overall, that the camera angles themselves were very flat and a little too head on. And what I mean by that, it was like, I don't know, for instance, it's like if I turned I don't want to do this because I don't want to mess up the angle that I have my laptop at now, but it would be like if I moved my laptop to like film me head on. I'll do it for the sake of making an example, right? It's like if I recorded this entire podcast like this. It just doesn't make very much sense, does it? I would rather, and this might not be the best angle that I could possibly go with, but by having it slanted, it captures more. And so I feel like the angles that they used in this railway station scene, they were very weird. They just didn't make any sense. It's like, I felt like they were overemphasizing the characters when they should have been taking in the atmosphere. And I wouldn't have a problem with it. It wouldn't have stuck out to me at all if it hadn't been just so out of place within the context of the series overall, right? Because like I said before, this really is as bad as it's been in the entire series overall. And it's really only for this one like I would say 5-minute scene. This 5-minute handful of scenes, right? It's only about 5 to 7 minutes long, but it's really bad. And it's strange to me that they deviated from how they've approached these similar scenes to this one in the series so far. All the outdoor scenes, all of the scenes that involve natural lighting, they've handled it a very specific way. They've set a precedent that they haven't followed up on. Here, for whatever reason, they've decided to deviate from it and go in a different direction. And yeah, I just don't know why they did that, because it for me it broke up the rhythm and that they established previously, and it's like they chose to it's like they went out of their way to go for the cheaper looking methods this time around. And I'm sure it's just a fluke. I'm gonna give this also. I'm also gonna give this the benefit of the doubt. I'm sure it's just a fluke, but it's like it's just weird, I don't know. Nothing to really say about it beyond that either way. But in terms of the episode itself, the episode was fine in terms of the technical stuff. Nothing to really say about it one way or the other. Although I did like how they there was one good moment that I in addition to the playground stuff that we're talking about before, there was also this scene with Franz and Mitzi in Franz's apartment. I liked how they slightly adjusted the lighting in there to make it a little less yellow. Because like we've talked about in previous episodes, Simone, the color yellow in a lot of literature and art, it represents, not only does it represent happiness and whatnot, but it can also represent sickness. And so prime example of that would be in Crime and Punishment, Raskolnikov, the main character in Crime and Punishment, Raskolnikov, who ends up he murders an old woman. He before he does that, he starts the story out in an apartment that has yellow wallpaper in it. And the yellow wallpaper it's supposed to represent his sickly malaise, I guess, malaised state of mind at the time. Part of the reason why he decides to do something as drastic as take another person's life, of course. And so with this, I almost feel as though it's something similar. The light in Franz's apartment, it's less yellow and more white, as if to depict to convey that the air in the room is cleaner now. That someone someone that's relatively sweet and pure and innocent like Mitzi is living there, and that Mitzi's around and that she's in Franz's life. The lighting is a good visual cue, and I think in a way it lets the audience know that yes, as a matter of fact, Mitzi has brightened Franz's life a bit, even if it's just by a little bit. It's less sickly and decay filled in the apartment now that she's there. Is there anything you'd like to add to any of that, Simone? You got any perspective that you'd like to contribute?
Yeah, I think I will agree to what you said, because I also noticed that I get the direction that they wanted to take. I get why they put those things in there in that particular episode or particular scene, but I guess they just did it somehow too intense or too much, because the show has established something or a different, because we already in this episode, the ninth episode, we already seen how the shows go, what are the aesthetic aspects that this show has to portray particular themes and scenes. And in this one, it's a bit different. It's really different compared to what is it. So we could mean something different from what the show really is taking this so far. So yeah, it somehow contradicts to what is really us all about.
Yeah, and I think it wouldn't have been, like you said, it wouldn't have been as bad if they hadn't been so extreme about it. They might have perhaps jumped the ship a little bit. Maybe what's the word? Overshot a little. I would say maybe they just fell just slightly outside of that range of tolerability to make it to the point where it is something that sticks out like a sore thumb and you have to address it. But other than that, like I said, I want to give this as the benefit of the doubt, as much good faith as possible, because I do like what the series has been so far. I really want to like it as much as I possibly can. But these things have to be addressed. They have to be pointed out, because you could always be better. Not to get obsessed with it and become I guess a debilitating perfectionist or something similar of the sort. But you gotta figure out what's right and what's wrong. You gotta draw distinctions between the two, between good and bad, and we have to have these discussions on quality in the various artistic mediums, film, book, film. I'm sorry, film, literature, theater, all of it, television, so on and so forth. So yeah, Simone, to get into the actual the bits and bobs that have to do with the actual narrative of this episode itself, Simone. What did you think of Franz's reunion with Rhino? Do you think the conflict between the two of them will ever be resolved?
Yeah, I think that's out of the blue. I didn't expect that to happen as easily. I guess I expected there more turn up events regarding between Franz and Reinhold, knowing that Reinhold's character is a bit weird or is not really the normal. He has the capability to be a villain or a very keen antagonist in the story. So I am expecting a bit more context between the two, but um, somehow Franz address it right away before something might brew or the tension between them might grow bigger.
And do you think that conflict will happen later? Do you think it's just been put on ice for now, but it'll come back to haunt them in later episodes, future episodes, probably maybe the next couple parts or so, even?
Yeah, yeah. There's a possibility that that thing could happen, but not as intense uh, that I'm thinking about it. After the after the conflict between them and Rhino take place when he lost his arm because of Rhino and all that.
Yeah, right.
So all those conflicts might only rise from Rhino itself because Rhino is really I can that even though you gave him a benefit of the doubt or you gave him there's some hopes in his character, but there's also a huge because he's really somehow jealous or he wanted to portray a particular character or and if someone bothers or puts get on his way, he's going to do something bad or just to eliminate them out of the scene because yeah.
Right. And in a way, in that sense, he's almost like a perfect foil to Franz himself, right? Because in a way, he wants to be who Franz is. He wants to be Franz. He wants to have that personality, that character, but he can't because Franz is a unique specimen. Franz is the kind of person he's so weird, just intrinsically. That's just part of his makeup is that he's a weirdo, and I think Reinhold is a little more. I think Reinhold's problem is actually that he's a little too normal. He's a little too normal for the kind of life that he's leading, for the kind of habits that he has. Even though he's controlled by them, there is still he has much more potential, I would say, than Franz himself to be normal because Franz just isn't normal. Franz is detached. Franz is in a lot of ways he's a very literary creation as a character because you wouldn't really find someone like that in real life. He's so weird in such a weird specific way that his eccentricities they're not really something that you would probably see in real life. He's almost like an idealized kind of crazy, whereas Reinhold is more realistic. Reinhold you see people like Reinhold all the time. They're usually in real life they're usually victims of let's say forms of sexual assault and abuse, to put it as nicely as we can. That people like that they have deeply rooted psychological issues, but if they didn't have those, they'd probably be very normal. They'd probably be just like I don't know. It's not that they're that weird because of those issues. Let's not get into that whole thing, but they are because of what happened to them. They are slightly off. They do things differently. They have different tendencies. And it can lead to a lot of damage. It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing at all. Obviously, not that anyone said it was a good thing, but it's one of those things. Whereas with Franz, it's almost like Franz kind of just came out of nowhere. It's almost as if Franz exists in a vacuum. It's almost as if aside from what happened with his wife, it's almost like he has no past at all. It's almost like he just sort of came out of the ground one day and just started doing his thing. That's how at ease he is with his life and his choices and even his demons. As bad as it can get, it never really gets to the point where he's as fucked up as Reinhold is when he's at his breaking point or at his brink, let's just say. And so, yeah, in terms of the relationship that they have with each other, I don't think. I think it's safe to say that they've never really had what one would consider to be a stable, healthy relationship. From the very beginning, from the outset, their quote unquote friendship has been built on. I would describe it as a mutual validation of personal demons and the like, right? And faults and flaws and whatnot. So the way I see it, it's like it's Franz on the one hand, Franz helps Reinhold self-destruct in terms of his love life by taking on his. They're both enablers. They're mutual enablers. They validate each other. They did that at first until Franz pulled out. But before, at the very beginning, Franz enabled Reinhold when it came to his serial psychotic, what's the word for it? Yeah, this sort of pathological womanizing. He supported that. He made it worse by enabling it. Whereas Reinhold, on the other hand, on the other side of things, Reinhold treats Franz like an equal, despite his various eccentricities and unstable, bizarre personality. It's like the reason they meet is because Franz kind of awkwardly walks up to him and asks him if he's been to prison before. That's a weird thing to say to a person when you're first meeting them, when you want to talk to. That's not usually how you that's not usually how you make new friends and all that. But I think Reinhold sees he sees him as a fellow. He sees him as someone he has a lot in common with. He sees him almost as a brother in a certain sense. Yes, and so I think that's what he provides Franz. He offers him fraternity. He offers him appropriate company, I guess, for who Franz is. And they're very similar in many key ways. And mainly, I think the biggest thing they have in common is that they are both societal outcasts. And highly tormented or demented individuals. They let their flaws control them more often than not. More so than the personal demons that they have. They have a much tighter grip on them than most other people's do. Even you could even look at them and you could even look at certain alcoholics and go, wow, that guy's way more that guy's super functional compared to the likes of Franz and Reinhold. It's just they're in a league of their own when it comes to being led around by the worst parts of themselves, right? And so, yeah, that being said, for me, it's only a matter of time until another conflict breaks out between them. And I have a feeling that Franz will eventually kill Reinhold in a fit of rage or in self-defense or something towards the end of the series. There's not much to base that very specific prediction on, but that's what I think for now. Just based on everything we've seen so far, I feel it's just the bubble is going to burst. Just like the bubble with the social and political stuff, that's going to burst. This is also going to burst. This is that on a personal level. That's what I think is going to happen. I don't know, Simone. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree?
There's a possibility that those things might happen, especially France. I can agree again with France because it's really unpredictable. I mean, he's predictable, but his nature is way more different. Really strange to compare it with us, with how normal humans are. And that in every person, you might see bits and hits, pieces of pieces of somehow some traits that they gave from their childhood or past experiences, and I don't have any clues regarding those who he is when he's growing up or he's a child or he get this particular trait or why he's acting in this way. I get a little bit of hints of that thing. So to add more to your argument regarding who Franz really is or how he's brought up to this, I guess.
Yeah. Sometimes people are, I think all of us are at one point in our lives we are in some way. I don't think we can avoid it. Like I said, I think Franz is sort of he acts very much like he's born in a vacuum. And what I mean by that is that he acts like a person who has never been affected by the outside world at all, by the same things that the average human being. Well, no, not the average human being. That every single person is affected by their environment, their experiences, their childhood as well, their personal development and everything. And so, yeah, as human beings, we cannot help but be affected by all those things in some way or another. The average person probably doesn't have to worry about the same things that someone who maybe grew up being abused in some way or another, maybe had bad parents or grew up poor, whatever. It's going to be different. It's different for everybody. But yes, I feel as though Franz is unique because I could see Reinhold being a victim of trauma, whereas with Franz, it's almost like his problems are just part of who he. Like I said, I keep saying this, but it's just part of who he is. Part of who he is. It's like it's his nature. It's like he's a different species, and that species, for whatever reason, they act the way he does. Very extreme, very extremely, very irrationally by our standards, our conventional human standards, I guess. But yeah, it's almost as if he's some other creature, not human at all, or maybe the most human. Maybe arguably he is the most in touch with the primal origins of our species, but that's debatable. But maybe that's an argument for another day. We don't really have too much new information to go on to really get into that debate, I guess, if we were to. So instead what I'll do is I'll just move forward in the narrative, Simone. And what I want to know is what did you think of Franz's conversation with the man in the white suit on the street of temptation in this episode? It was a little different from the other conversations that he's had with him in previous episodes. So, what did you make of it, and what did you take away from it this time around?
Out of all the conversation that he had with that man, this one is the most meaningful. Or there's to compare it, there are much more substance in it, or a lot of things that we can get from it, or because it's completely during the past episodes, it seems like that's what he's really supposed to do. It's his job to somehow call out his customers and share all these things for them to be attracted to get into this sinful or kind of lust driven place. But now it's somehow he's changed. It's just it could be how normal human being can act such thing when things are not really the way they used to. But with how Franz tried to start a conversation with him, talking about this, for him, she's sharing the story about, and I forgot who's the hell told the story, but a lot of narratives that are put in the Bible and some folk and myths that they talk about. It's somehow it's not only for them to argue with it, but also for us. But it's somehow that they're kind of engaging through these themes and train of thoughts, but somehow is kind of leave the thinking to us, or how we are going to respond to these kinds of thoughts that which are not really the way we used to talk to.
Yeah, sure. They keep it open ended, like you said, and so for me, the way I see it, the man in the white suit is losing his grip on Franz very clearly. He's lost the impact that he had on him before, the power. Because even at the beginning, Franz was a little, he was resolute about committing to what he had promised in the first episode. But the first time he met the man and walked down the street, it was clear that subconsciously even he's being coaxed. He's being lured back into the person he was before. That's just something it's a problem. It's there. But he hasn't been acting on it yet, but it's there. It's appeared. It's made itself known. Of course, that's that suggests that it's going to get worse and worse as time goes on. But now this third time around, it's like, no, it hasn't gotten worse. It's gotten better. You would think, right? Because because Franz is still resisting most of his temptations. At least the internal ones, because I think there's a distinction between his external and internal temptations. Externally, at this point in the series, in episode 9, he's become a pimp of sorts. He's not a real pimp, I guess, because he doesn't force Mitzi to do what she does. He doesn't like that she does what she does, in order to make money. But she needs to do it in order to provide for him, because he cannot work for himself. He cannot provide for himself anymore. Now that he's lost his arm, the society has given up on him. This is the only way for him to make money, but it does require that he become a pimp of sorts. Not a conventional pimp, but a pimp, nonetheless, in a certain sense, depending on how you look at it. But yeah. So he's kind of a pimp, but then he is a veritable. He is 100%. He is a petty criminal. And he's still not in the clear yet. He's still not leading the responsible, socially approved existence that he wanted to coming out of prison. But at least he's still putting up a fight against the worst of his demons, I would say, the fundamental ones. And I have a feeling that, but because I feel as though before I get into what I was about to say, the Whore of Babylon, to me, that is just a representation. That the Whore of Babylon is a manifestation of the worst of Franz himself, the deepest, darkest, innermost recesses of his being, of his heart, his cold black heart, or whatever, however you want to put it. That if the way I see it, it's like the second he gives in, the second he accepts the offer to sleep with the Whore of Babylon, he's done, he's finished. That's the end of the Franz that we know now. That's the beginning of really fucked up Franz. That he's gone. That's the threshold that you do not cross. That's the line that you do not pass if he wants to be normal, if he wants to be redeemed, if he wants salvation and personal redemption. And so yeah, for me personally, just the way, based on how most stories tend to go, I have a feeling that it isn't going to last, this resolve, this resistance, and that the man in the white suit is acting dejected over nothing, really. It's only a matter of time before Franz accepts his offer. What do you think, Simone? What's your perspective?
Maybe there's always a possibility that those things might happen. That Franz is always in the verge of surrendering to something that is not really his nature, or not really somehow associated with how he acts or how he interacts with these people. Because it's also, you can also notice it with the way he speaks. His ideology. It's somehow that not really he don't want to break any of those, but at some point he's able to break them.
Yeah, but I would say that it's hard to predict one way or the other, because like we've said, they've made it clear, well and clear, that Franz is not a normal person. So you can't hold him by the same standards. We really don't know what to expect. He's all about stream of consciousness, free association. He's pretty much he is the personification of stream of consciousness writing, essentially. That's who he is. He is stream of consciousness, the character. He is free association, the character. He is a person's subconscious as a character. It's almost as if his subconscious and conscious have been switched. That's the best way I could describe him. So you really don't know what's going to happen either way. But so moving forward into the discussion, Simone, what did you think of Max's advice to Franz about going straight again during the scene where Franz goes to Max's bar with Willie, and Max tries to stop him and tell him, like, hey man, you're not doing good. You got to stop. You got to stick to your resolutions and everything. What did you think of the advice that he gave him? What did you think of the pep talk? Did you get anything out of it? Is there anything worth noting from that particular scene?
Yeah, it made me think of his friend. But his friend name, I forgot his friend's name.
Yeah, so did I, to be honest.
His friend. So his friend.
Yeah, the guy who works for Pumps.
Yeah, I also forgot the name of his friend. That we. Yeah. In the beginning in going through halfway through the series, we're talking about that. That particular friend would stick till the end of this episode. That when any other character will get out or come and go, it seems like that he's the only character but will stay for with with Franz throughout the show, but it seems like that now he's already gone, and now it made me think that maybe it's Max, that maybe Franz Rupert or someone that really cares about Franz at all.
Yeah. I'm trying to find his name, but I can't. Yeah. But I know what you mean, though. I know what you mean, but I don't know. I would be willing to argue that it's not clear enough because again, like these are filler episodes compared to the main episodes. I feel like that his best friend, is a main character, so he might only come around when the main conflict. I feel like that's the trend that seems to be the case, right? In the series so far, he's only really been there when the plot needs him to be. When like something really important is happening. Otherwise, he's not really around. But I know what you mean. You could take it either way because he hasn't shown up. It says a lot that his absence is actually a character almost in and of itself in that respect because he isn't around. And like you said, yeah, Max is older. Max is older. He's wiser. He's of a different generation to Franz is. And even though it's a long time ago for us already, as it is 1920s Berlin, it's like you got to think about how different the world was probably when Max was a young man compared to how it is now when he's an old man running a bar in 1920s Berlin. It's like I'm sure his life was completely different because things were different. Things, the society, the world, the culture, it all evolved. It's going through these cycles. It's changing constantly every single day, and with industrialization and with just all that comes with it, of course, with progress. It's just a lot. Shit changes, shit becomes a bit different. And so I feel like Max, yeah, he would probably be more reliable because he's older and he's survived all of that. And he's a much better mentor than the newspaper vendor was, because the newspaper vendor, I mean, I know that these are very relatively minor characters, but let's think about this for a moment. The newspaper vendor who Franz worked for, on and off, and Max, they're almost two sides of the same coin. They're both members of the dying generation, the previous generation. They're fading out. They're part of a, as they say, they're part of a dying breed. But Max seems to handle himself very well, whereas the newspaper vendor is just falling apart and he's falling to pieces and he's not doing very good at all. He's not making it. So I don't know, Simone, is there anything you can take away from that concept of this dying generation that some members of which can handle it and some can't, and just the clash that they have, the contrast that there is between themselves and probably what their lives were like compared to how life is now in 1920s Berlin, which is contemporary for the series. Obviously not now, but for the series. What do you think of all of that?
The way that I see the past is much more complicated to how things are now. We can argue that some things are. It depends on how you look at these things, but somehow things that take place in the last century is much more intense compared to what are the things that we enjoy now, or the fact that now we have the rights to do this, or to a lot of things that we can take out of this generation or era. Maybe things are really complicated during that time. There are a lot of chaos taking place. So maybe just a simple form of living or a simple form of happiness might be easier for them to take out. Maybe majority of the people from back then. But somebody can argue with me about it.
Sure, yeah, sure. And well, I know what you mean, because it's like yeah, I mean, you gotta place yourself in the perspective of them. You gotta really think about like what it was really like. You can't approach it. You can't take the textbook route. You got to do like with great literature. It's like let's say Henry Miller or Louis Ferdinand Céline, older writers from an older generation, but they really do in their own ways, by talking about their lives. They end up cataloging. They document what life was like during during the end of the 19th century and the start of the 20th, especially the start of the 20th, and then the differences between those two eras, because they're very lot of stuff happened, a lot of history there, But yeah, I think you got to think about it like this, the back then it's actually only been very recently in human history that people have had time to do things other than work, other than work to survive, work to pay your bills, work to provide for your family, work to continue the human race. It's like it's been a lot of strife and a lot of work. I mean, it's just people forget about it. They take that for granted, you know. So you didn't really have time to worry about political causes. You didn't really have time to get mad about things on Twitter. You didn't really have time to have existential crises even a lot of the time, you know, unless you were really smart, unless you were like an artist, unless you had that disposition. It's like the average person, they were too busy fucking working. That was the problem. Like, that's what you have to worry about. That's your existence. It's not about, I guess, the philosophical abstract implications of X, Y, and Z. It's about, shit, am I going to be able to get food on the plate, this week? Am I going to be able to feed my kids? You know, that sort of thing. And so, yeah, it's like, and then also obviously the systems that were in place. I mean, we've gone from feudalism where literally like two people, like five people ruled an entire nation and you know, dictated your entire life. You know, if you, and like, let's say the caste system in India, it's like if you're born in the wrong caste, that's all you get. You're never gonna, there's a glass ceiling, you're never getting out of that. You know, we've gone from that to people going from country to country, changing cultures, you know, changing everything about themselves in most parts of the world, just being able to do that, having the ability to do that, you know. It's not perfect. It's not equal, you know, it's not equally distributed, but in a lot of the world today, it's like things are fucking fantastic. We have so much to be grateful for. It's fucking mind-boggling how lucky we are, you know. It's like we really are in like a great time. As much as it may not seem that way, more, you know, just because we are who we are and our lives are our lives, it's like that's never going to change. But we have to, we really do have to stop and think about this stuff. It's like, shit, dude, holy fuck, like how did we end up being born now rather than 100 years ago? We'd be fucked if we were born 100 years ago, you know. It's like, Jesus Christ. I'm just lucky I wasn't, you know, drafted for like World War I or World War II, things like that. It's like you gotta take time to appreciate that. So yeah, I don't know. Anything you'd like to add, Simone, before we move on to we're coming up to the end of the discussion here. Only like a couple more questions, so not too much longer. But anything you'd like to add to any points you'd want to bring about before we switch topics?
Yeah, maybe we can get to the next question, I guess.
Yeah, sure. So and this is probably, I saved the best for last, I'd like to think, right? The most important thing that happens in this episode, I would be willing to argue, is the anarchist meeting and the ideas that they were talking about there, that they were proposing with that weird, the whole ideology, the anarchist movement or whatever. So Simone, what I want to ask you is just, well, what did you think of the anarchist meeting, the ideas that they were proposing, and like, I don't know, do you think what they're advocating is a valid philosophy, or is it ultimately paradoxical? I want to get your perspective on all of that. So just let me know and let the audience know what you think, because it's I think there's a lot to get into here. So yeah.
I get what they mean. I guess it's only in that particular scene or the preceding scene after that. Franz also talked about that. He's kind of surprised that how these people have a different approach, but they all have different approach. But at the end of their what truly is their goal is somehow similar to each other. They have different paths to take, but they will meet at the end of the day in that particular goals of theirs. But yeah, I somehow see it. But what make this philosophy flawed is the way that how they are going to execute it, because there are a lot of things that might be constituted to it, that which may much worsen the scenario that they're trying to somehow solve. Or are they really wanted to solve things? As I see that this kind of movement, they're trying to make something different. They wanted to fix this broken system, but the way that they are going to execute their plans on how they will change things, it might worsen the scenario.
Yeah. I almost feel like the best thing they could do, like the most successful the anarchists could be, is by tearing down the other parties, that the other organizations that they're against, the other ideologies. That's probably like the most they can do. So that's how I see it. It's like if the anarchists, they could succeed, not necessarily succeed, but and like you said, it would probably make everything like a million times worse, to be honest, because it would create a power vacuum that would need to be filled, and just based on how people are and how systems and order work, because you need order. That's the problem with the anarchists, is that they don't think that order is necessary, or they want to reject it, and it's just like, it's a fundamental thing. Sorry, buddy, but focus on something else, because that's just not, it's a dead end altogether to try to have an ideology or an organization that has no organization or really anything, no system. You need order. Order is essential. Can't get rid of it. What you can mess with is the degree and the intensity, the level of order that's in something, but or the kind of order. But it's like trying to it's like trying to not breathe air or something. It's like, you need oxygen. It's essential. You're a carbon-based life form. You need to breathe oxygen in. You need it. No getting around that. No getting around that. Sorry, not now. Anyway, maybe 100 years from now, it's like going to be a laughable concept. But it isn't right now, and it hasn't. It definitely wasn't back then. So, but yeah, for me, what the problem with anarchy is, that it's simply too confusing. Do you know what I mean? It's a good thing to think about. I think anarchism, it works best as a thing to think about from an abstract, hypothetical standpoint, right? It's something that you would teach in school, in like philosophy class. Like, here's anarchism. Like, this is why it doesn't work. This is an extreme end of the socio-political spectrum. It helps you understand the real stuff a bit better. It's like a good book, it's like a lot of literature isn't real, a lot of it's I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that. It's exaggerated though, Lord of the Rings isn't real, but it's like, it has a lot of real stuff in it, and it illustrates that real shit, that wisdom, that insight, through abstract hypothetical means. And so I feel like anarchism would be something very similar, but applied in a political science kind of frame or point of view, context. And so yeah. But that being said, as good as it could be for that abstract hypothetical stuff, I feel like I seriously doubt that there's any feasible, concrete way to apply its ideas in a real world, on a real world basis. Let's just say, in real life, you can't. I don't think you can do it. I don't think it's practical that way at all. I think it's the exact opposite of practical. And even if you could, by the way, I don't know if you would want to. Why would you want to have chaos? Why would you want to have a society that lacks order, or structure? That's shit. That's people getting killed in the streets. That's just people doing whatever the fuck they want without fear of consequence. It's like, just like, geez, that's just like, it's so much. It's bad. So for me, it's the anarchism. It's the kind of thing that, like, these days, when I hear the word anarchism, I think of edgy teenagers, fucking losers in their fucking parents' basement or whatever. Just that whole thing. Pretending to believe in, it's the kind of thing that edgy teenagers pretend to believe in order to feel superior in relation to others. They aren't smart or talented enough to do anything else, or to actually sit down and, like, commit themselves to any other sort of group or whatever. Not that that's a great thing to do, committing yourself to groups. It's fucking stupid. But, even I have infinitely more respect for a liberal or a liberal or a conservative than I do an anarchist. And that's saying a lot, because I don't have very much respect for anyone who self-identifies as any sort of political whatever association. It's fucking dumb to me. It's silly to me no matter what. But, like, anarchism is just a whole other level of fucking stupid. It's fucking dumb, So yeah, that's how I see it. It's just, there's nothing else to say. It's really just, it seems like a massive waste of time to me in every way. So I don't know. Simone, do you have a different take on it, or how do you feel about anarchism? I don't know. Do you like it? Are you into it, buddy? You gonna be an anarchist?
No, I won't be an anarchist, but the way I see anarchism is just they're trying to. I remember the word that Tiban said to Franz. He told that it's about solidarity, but the way that I see anarchism is not really solidarity at all, because mostly the way I see it on how the movements on Facebook and somehow like that are, it's somehow that for now they are all in the same thing, but for how long, or there's a probability that it might come to an end. It might be just for some sort of more personal interest, so they're just using this kind of arguments that they had now for them as a stepping stone to be able to move on to their different paths and personal interests to back up the society or the system that they are arguing with.
Yeah, all they want to do is just dismantle everything. It's not like they have a plan, you know. It's not like it's just like I don't know. And it's ridiculous. It's like how can they be about solidarity when you need in order for in order to achieve solidarity, you need to unify. There needs to be unification. How can you unify in a chaotic? It's just fucking stupid. It's all dumb. Like you can't even get past like the beginning of it. You can't even get past the surface. There's nothing underneath other than just it's like a jumbled mess of wires. It's like what people what the back of your TV set looks like. It's just like fuck that. I don't know. Yeah, it's bad. It's rough. So then going from there, of course, between Franz and the man he was debating in the dilapidated building after the anarchist meeting. So that was the scene with the playground equipment and all that. Simone, whose side are you on and why? Between Franz and the anarchist, whose side would you pick and why?
Maybe none. I don't want to choose any side of them. Maybe I can go with Franz because he's kind of arguing that what the man is saying is not really the way it is, or it's not really the answer. But at the end of the day, somehow Franz realizes some sort of things that he's fighting for, or he's on it. And somehow he is at the end of the day of what the man is really talking about. So somehow I don't wanna agree with any of them.
Yeah.
But the way that it shows how messed up their points of view are, it somehow gives you hints or clues on how you are going to fix what their argument really is, or these are the precautions or somehow cautions that you shouldn't do to to mess up what you're really planning to fix the
Yeah.
system.
And I mean, and that's the anarchists, they serve the same role. They have the same function that they would in like I was talking about earlier, in the hypothetical and the abstract and stuff. It's like within the context of the show itself, within the context of the narrative, they actually like them being there and like having their stupid opinions and stuff, like having their stupid ideology. It actually it helps you realize like just how stupid all the other ideologies too are too. You know what I mean? Socialism's messed up, capitalism's messed up. I mean, it's probably the best system out of all of them, but it's still bad. You know, communism's definitely fucked. And Nazism, I mean, like we don't even need to like it's obviously it's fucking garbage. You know, all of them are bad. All the systems are bad. All the ideologies are just, it's all shit. That's basically what the anarchists are there to let you know. And they really do highlight that. They help you realize it's like, oh, you bash the anarchists, but it's like everyone else. It's not like anyone else is much better. You know, so it's like, what do? The whole spectrum is just broken. It's just damaged from the start. There's nothing to really even, it's like, geez. So yeah, I would say between the two of them, I would pick Franz. Obviously, he's just more correct. But it's like again, it's a debate. It's really just anarchism versus anti-anarchism. It's just Franz is just tearing down what it is that he's just countering what it is that the anarchist is saying. But there's no solution. It's a very pointless argument when it comes down to it. It only really has its point. The real debate is in the final conversation, I think, between Franz, Willie, Ava, and Herbert. That's where where you get something out of all of this. But yeah, that first argument is just the first debate. It's important because it does contrast to the debate that kind of comes after it. But yeah, I don't think anything gets done. It's not productive at all. It's very counterproductive. It's very counterintuitive. So I would agree with you. I wouldn't pick out either side because both of them are wrong and both of them are keeping things from actually going somewhere, in that sense. And so, Simone, last question about anarchy that I want to bring up with you for tonight is, I don't know, Simone, do you think can anarchy ever work as a social and political ideology? Yes or no, and why?
I think of course not. Yeah, it's not really the way that we should use to fix things because the way that when you're looking at the steps, of course, in the first arguments or what is this really all about? Just like you said, that how can you form solidarity if your foundation is chaos? So it's arguably that it's not really the solution because it's kind of mess up the society. But somehow it's good. The good thing that we can get out of um, anarchism is we can use this as a guideline that this is now we shouldn't do. So so that we will be able to fix the society or the system, but or whatever it is that you're trying to fix that is associated with society or the human nature itself.
Right. Yeah, we made a good. It makes for a good example, but other than that, nah. Um, and it's simply because you really the core problem with anarchism is that you need to have like a platform that's more than just our platform. Like what we want to do is just get rid of the other people, get rid of the other groups that actually at least they have something that they want to do. Like there's something material there. It's almost like I don't know that and nothing gets you nothing. What is just I'm against everybody else. Cool, fantastic. Go fuck yourself. You have nothing to contribute at all. Why don't you actually contribute something? They don't have anything. Got nothing. Crickets. So I don't know. It's just useless. It's pointless. You can have elements of anarchism in certain things maybe, but not. You can't have it by itself. You can't have it by itself at all. It just does. It dies. It's like I don't know. It'd be like trying to have a human heart like survive without a body. It's like the heart's gonna die without being inside a person because it needs everything else in order to function. So it's like there you have it. Um, just a dead heart, just a just a dead, disembodied heart. That's kind of how I see anarchism, just as a whole. And so, and yeah, last question of the night, Simone. What did you think of the final conversation between Franz, Willie, Ava, and Herbert? And that's the conversation where Franz kind of realizes that he has a lot more in common with the anarchists than he initially believed. So I don't know. Did you get anything out of that? Is there anything you'd like to comment on about that insight, that last little bit of insight before the episode ends? And I don't know. What's your take? What's your perspective?
Yeah, looking back to the episode that we have covered, I guess it's episode 2 or 3 when Franz get into Nazism. Yeah, that's um uh to compare it with how he is or how he approached Nazism back then. It seems like that he doesn't really get what he's fighting for or what is it why he joins this Nazism movement at all. He doesn't even really know what it is all about. So that's how I guess he's able to easily get out of it. But now to compare it with how he used to approach anarchism, it seems like that this where the real problem might is going to start or rise.
Yeah, maybe.
This is where the real problem might start will rise, I guess.
Yeah. So maybe. So what by that do you mean that like are you saying that like he might be more willing to become an anarchist because he's already kind of like an anarchist in his personal life? He's weird enough to want to believe something like that. Is that what you're saying? Or
Uh, Somehow, but not exactly. I mean, he's able to get what anarchism is. I mean, he found the connection it is that to compare it with how he approached Nazism. He's not really fully into it, or it's just somehow it's just trend, and so he's going in it. But now it's just more of a foundation here in anarchism because, just like I said, there's a connection between him and this ideology.
okay, so what you're saying is that he's more sympathetic or like I guess susceptible to anarchism than he was to Nazism, because with Nazism it's like he's kind of put it down since episode 2 and not really had anything to do with it ever since. It's not even been referenced in the rest of the series so far. Not really. You've had a few radio broadcasts here and there in the background, but it's not a major thing. But it will. I mean, in real life it will be, but unfortunately, fucking hell. But yeah. What was I gonna say now? Yeah. So with the anarchists, it's like, the way I see it though, it's like anarchism is it's so stupid that I don't think it's gonna be a threat. My prediction is that it's not even gonna be talked about in probably the rest of the series. So I don't think there's any risk of him like becoming a full on anarchist. But I think the scene is more so to just illustrate, just in a basic, general, broad sense that what we were talking about, human systems and everything, just how people work and stuff. But yeah, I get what you're saying. I just disagree with it. And I don't know. Do you have any counters or anything? Anything you'd like to defend? Or I just don't agree with it.
Yeah, I don't know. Just like we always talk about at the end of the episodes, that the series is really unpredictable. I mean, it's not really the way we're going to predict it. It's not really the way that the show will definitely go. So
Yeah.
I guess that there's just a possibility, but it's not a high. It's not that high that the way that I talk about it or mean it, I guess. But but there's bits and hints, because if you're going to take that particular path, the whole show will be a lot different from what it is really all about, I guess.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's like we can't even like debate for fun. It's like there's not even enough information to like do it as like a hypothetical kind of like kind of classroom thing. You can't even do that. So it's just like I don't know. But yeah. I mean, and speaking of endings, by the way, we're at the end of this particular installment of the Imperial Tides podcast, episode 9 of 14 of Berlin Alexanderplatz. I don't know, Simone. How do you think it went? Good episode, bad one. It's kind of weird because you're not really here, but we got your voice, so it's all good. But yeah, I don't know. Went well, went bad. Your take on just the episode itself of the podcast, not the show.
Yeah. Wait. The first thing that is bad about it is I'm not able to record the way that we used to, or how we started the show is, I guess. And also, I guess just like how we always do in every episode, we always try to talk about every bits and pieces about it. I guess we're able to tackle those parts, but some of the teams that might be we're not able to really dig in deeper or dive into the depths of it, because there's only a pale hint of it in the show, or it's kind of vague at sometimes how the show is portrayed. But there's a probability that we can talk about it in the next episode to once the show these things more clear.
Yeah. Right, and that's another thing too. Is like the problem with trying to predict it is that we really can't afford to predict things without like altering the nature of the show itself. Right, it's very specific. It's very particular. It's kind of the worst thing when it comes to like trying to review or analyze something, because it's very antithetical to that approach. It's like, no, you gotta just see it all. And so yeah, that it's a bit frustrating at times when it's like you take on some big undertaking like this, 14 parts. You got to watch all 14 parts in order to get the full picture. But it's like until you get to the whole thing, you gotta try your best to get as much from each individual part as possible, and that can be challenging sometimes. So I know 100% what you mean, but yeah. I don't know. Is there? I got to think of any housekeeping I got to throw in before I go. Got a new light. I changed up the lighting because the fluorescent lamp that I was using before behind the camera, it was the laptop. My laptop camera was auto focusing on it, and so it made the lighting very unstable. It's like 1 minute, like 1 second. It's one way, and the other it's another. It was like paling. It was messing up, so I got rid of it altogether. I don't like fluorescent light anyway. I think it's too bright. It's too harsh. So we've got a nice mild, yellow lamp going on here, and I think this new setup's really good. I think we'll probably just stick with this forever, probably, to be honest, because the background's not distracting anymore. It's just nice and it's just straightforward. It's simple but effective, and it's good, And the pictures, I got my pictures on my board and everything. I'll be switching these out. I'll be changing them up. My printer's actually broken, so I wanted to print I honestly wanted to print like 20 more, but I can't do that. So I got to work with what I have. The problem, I know no one gives a shit about this, but I'm just going to talk about it anyway. The problem is that I like printed out a bunch of pictures that I could not format vertically, right? So you see how these are vertical, they're up and down. A lot of the pictures that I have right now are horizontal, so I have to basically, in order to get anything out of them, I have to basically just put them in front of this picture here. So I have to sacrifice one of the two vertical pictures in order to have a single horizontal picture, and I can't have two horizontal pictures at once, so it's a whole mess. I thought it would be easy, because I just made these with Scotch tape and comic book poster board and comic book like plastic sleeves that hold comics. I took a bunch of those and put these printed pictures in them instead, and it's like I had plans to do like a whole other line, and I have to figure out how I'm going to do that. I think I fucked up the formatting when I was printing them out. I think because you can print them either in portrait or landscape, and it was the first time that I did it, so I didn't know what to expect. But now that I know, hopefully the next set won't be as useless to me. But we'll see how it goes with that. But that's what I've got going on my end. But yeah, and then in terms of the channel in general at large, we've got some milestones coming up. My short-term goals for now, for Sunset Sea Productions, are to get to 50 episodes of Imperial Tides. It would be really great to get to 50 episodes of Imperial Tides. I feel like if we get to 50 episodes, we could probably just quit. Like, honestly, I don't want to quit, but like we could quit after 50, and that's it. That'd be a really good run in my view of things. And then also 25 episodes of Coffee with Holden. That'd be fantastic. Really want to do that. Really want to go back to the one upload a night schedule. It's just a matter of getting the motivation to do it. I don't want to do it when I'm not feeling like doing it. It's just as simple as that. I don't want to put out something that's not good. That's not quality. But yeah, and then really other than that, I don't know. You'll probably have to look forward to more of these audio only Simone kind of one-sided conversations, just because Simone is in a different location and he's real life is more important than what's going on here. So you gotta take that into consideration. Hopefully you guys are understanding anyway. I don't think that's a problem. I think you guys are pretty chill when it comes to that sort of thing anyway. But yeah, just in case you aren't, please take our real life circumstances into consideration, because we are just regular folk. We don't get paid for this or anything. It's not like that. And I wouldn't want to get paid for it anyway. And I wouldn't even really want anyone to watch this anyway. I like the way things are now. But that's just me. Anything else at all? I don't know. Simone, is there anything you'd like to add? Any housekeeping you wanna bring forward or bring to the table, or comments, questions, concerns?
Yeah, I thought that the recording would work because I didn't bring my computer, and I borrowed two devices from my cousin. Said those are some minor defects, so I'm not able to record the usual way.
Yeah.
And also, I guess I like the way that this show is, the whole Sunset Sea production is taking. I mean, there's not much pressure. I mean, we're able to be free to talk about the things that we thought about this film and movies that those two are the same, I guess.
Yeah.
But there's not much pressure. I mean, we are able that it's much more of a practice, but in a meaningful way. It's something that, in a way, we are practicing something or improving the way you speak or something else. But in the other hand, we're able to make something productive out of this. That the work is not gone in vain. So that's what I like about it.
Yeah. No matter what we do, we'll always get something out of it. Even a bad episode, even the worst episode we've ever done, which I would say was probably the one about Shakespeare's poem or whatever, Venus and Adonis. That was probably the worst one we did, and I still got a lot out of it. And yeah, it's like you said, this particular era, this first era of the Imperial Tides podcast, of Imperial Tides history, I guess in general, Sunset Sea Productions and whatnot. It's really mainly geared towards self-improvement. And I got to be honest, I think this was a pretty good episode. It's like it's funny because it was like set up to be a disaster. We had a lot of audio and like technical problems before we even started recording, before I even pressed record. But despite all of that, it's like I feel like this is probably the best episode we've done so far. I don't know, Simone, do you feel that way, or like I feel like this was really good? Like I'm really happy with the turnout, with the result.
Yeah. I guess I thought that we're gonna be able to record because all those technical problems earlier. But I guess that it's really good. I didn't expect that the conversation would flow as smoothly as this one.
Yeah, so hopefully it's onward and upwards. It's onwards and upwards from here. Always improvement, constant improvement. Just that's what we're aiming for with these episodes. And yeah, hopefully I'll anytime I hope we can get I hope we can finish. Let me just say this: I hope we can finish Berlin Alexanderplatz soon. I hope that we can get the rest of the now it's 5 episodes. I hope we can get the remaining 5 episodes done and out of the way so that the series is complete. Because I want to know what happens as well. Like that's also a consideration as well. But yeah. And then after that, we'll follow up with 13 standalone episodes, regular, I would say standard coffee with, or not coffee with Holden, sorry, Imperial Tides episodes like we did, where you just do it's one. It's not this massive series. It's not this whole thing. It's just one movie, and it's self-contained. I want to do 13 more of those because when add all of that up, and we'll be at 50 episodes. We'll be at episode 50. And for episode 50, I've got a special. I got a good one. I got a nice piece all set up. It's going to be really fun when we get to that point. But yeah, as always, anytime we don't have an Imperial Tides episode of Imperial Tides, we will have an episode of Coffee with Holden instead. I will stick to that. I got to do at least one a day. It's like a little ritual for me now. It's nice to just kind of think about something. It keeps the brain healthy and whatnot. And it helps with the speaking and everything. But yeah. Other than that, I think we're pretty much good. Oh, one last thing. Yes, one more thing before we close out for the night. I've decided to officially, what's the word for it? Retire. I've decided to officially retire or phase out the cartoon filter that we use for the videos. So if you've noticed, if you watch the videos while listening to the audio for the podcast, for previous podcast episodes, you'll notice that we have this filter on, and it's an iMovie filter. It's comic book. The iMovie comic book filter. And the reason why I had it was, for one, I liked the look back then, and now I don't. 3 weeks later, I don't really like it anymore. I would like to just not have it anymore. I think it's very distracting. I think it's a little too strong. But at the time, I liked the aesthetic that it created. But it was also, it was mostly, to be honest, it was mostly just a way for me to try to hide the graininess of my laptop camera. And you know what? It's like, I think we're at a point now, 32 episodes in, it's like, fuck it. I don't know why be insecure about that anymore. Like, let's just, it is what it is. It's the reality of the situation. I'm not going to fight it anymore. I'm not going to try to hide it. I would much rather embrace it now. And yeah, so that we're not going to do that anymore. I think I'm like really happy with this yellow light though. It's like, it looks great. Like, I like my new setup. I'm going to stick with this probably for forever, for the foreseeable future. And yeah, things are looking up. So yeah, thank you guys for sticking with us on this journey and all that. Simone, any last words? Anything else you'd like to say before we go for the night? Before we say bye bye?
No, maybe I'll do it right away. Paalam.
Yeah, sure. And yeah. Thank you guys for watching. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and engage with us. We want to build a community here. Eventually, it would be nice to have a small but heavily involved community. That'd be fucking fantastic of like-minded individuals. People are into this stuff, into art, into the arts, into the intellectual stuff that, a lot of people would just go, oh, it's boring. We'd love to get the people who don't think that way, who appreciate this just as much as Simone and I try to on a pretty regular basis, I'd say. But yeah. With that being said, take care, guys, and bye for now, and see you in the next one. Peace.